I know for sure this episode we were talking about being open to receiving, having that vision and actually taking action to go after it, because the first episode we talked about was inspired action. And in that episode, I think that I also discussed a little bit about how sometimes taking inspired action before the vision is even fully realized, or before you even have an idea of how to go, is okay too. It's just running on a gut feeling. And so this episode kind of plays off of that, about being open to receiving once that inspired action is taken, and then even taking it a step further in the mindset aspect, right? Because that's kind of what this biggest thing is in being open to receiving, asking for what you want.
Asking for what you want.
I know that that's something that both of us have struggled with too. Yeah, so we'll open up there, and I'd love for you to tell the story you were telling right before we got on, because it just let me start going. Welcome to the Aligned and Divine podcast. I'm your host, Mercedes Smith.
And I'm your host, Olivia Thomas. We created this podcast to have a safe space for you to share, connect, relate, and ultimately to grow.
The goal of this podcast is to share with you the strategy and mindset necessary to align with your highest self, so you can massively uplevel your business, your relationships, your self-concept, and step into your innate divinity to raise the consciousness of the entire planet.
We want you to know that you are always aligned and divine. Love. Okay. Well, are you talking about the Will Smith story, or?
Yeah, whatever you were just talking about right now, I want you to tell everybody about it.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yes.
Yeah.
Asking for what you want, I think, is something that I have really, really been focused on and leaning into the last couple of years. I think when I kind of started my self-growth and spiritual journey, I felt this feeling of, this feeling that I think is really common of like, okay, don't ask for too much. Don't hope for too much, because you don't want to be disappointed. I think that's a big, big thing. And I've talked to multiple people and multiple friends that are like, well, I don't really want to manifest. I don't want to try to manifest things because I don't want to be disappointed. And I felt that at the beginning of my journey, but at the beginning of my journey, I really had this moment, this shifting moment, where I realized that in every situation, we can either hope for and focus on what we actually want, or we can try to play it safe and play and kind of listen to our ego and think, well, don't get your hopes up. What if let's play out the worst case scenario. So then if that does happen, you at least have rehearsed it, so it won't be that bad, right? You're kind of prepared. You're prepared for not getting what you want. But when I realized that in every situation, I could either focus on bad or focus on good, and I, for a long time, had been focusing on the bad, I made a decision that I was going to focus on the good and actually ask for what I want and allow myself to be in that space of receiving. And it has truly changed my life. And I kind of started with asking for small things, right? This was like before I moved to New York. And I kind of went into it of like, I'm going to try to manifest an amazing life and loving my life in New York and having a fun roommate situation and meeting amazing people and la da dee da. And so it was kind of small things, but it kept getting bigger and bigger. Eventually, I allowed myself to want to live alone. I was like, oh, I have 3 roommates. This is so fun, but I would love to live alone. I lived in New York. I was like, that's doesn't really rationally make sense. I was like, I have no idea how that's going to happen. But I was just like, you know what? Let's just see. Like, I'm going to envision myself living by myself. I want to, like, it could just be a little studio, whatever. And then literally the next day, my friend who lived in a studio decided to move in with her boyfriend so I could move into her place. And it was still an amazing COVID deal. It was crazy. So that was another shifting moment where I was like, oh shit, if you ask for what you want, if you allow yourself to ask for what you want, it will be given to you.
Oh my
I didn't even talk
God.
about Will Smith. So that was kind of how I started. Also, early on, I heard this clip from Will Smith, who I love, and he talks about manifesting really often. And he had this clip where he said, dream big, and you might as well dream big. You might as well go for what you want and ask for what you want, because being realistic, if you are being realistic, that is the fastest way to mediocrity, right? So like there's a lot of people who are just trying to be realistic, and that's what their life ends up being is it can be a good life, it can be a comfortable life, but it can be, realistic. And if you have these big dreams and big goals, allow yourself to want it and go for it,
Mhm.
because you deserve it.
So many things. I even had to write down notes about it too because I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think it's so funny too, especially like, when you're first on the journey of like connecting with your spiritual self and you're first on that beginning part of the journey, your mind kind of opens up in a different way. And for me, when I first thought about like manifesting and like the power that that had and all of those things, I found that manifesting was simply kind of the my faith walked out. It felt like manifesting was like an agreement between me and God. It
Yeah.
was like we're co-creators, and it was me trusting Him and also trusting in myself, and opening my mind up was the biggest thing about manifesting for me. So I totally feel you on that. And when it comes to that line you said earlier, which was people are always preparing for the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Right?
Oh my
Right?
goodness.
It
I
feels
think
good.
it
It feels good to be like, "Oh, it's fine. I can handle it. If the bad shit happens, I can handle it. It's fine."
Oh my goodness. But the thing is too is that's such a trauma response.
Such a trauma response.
And for me, one of the things that came up for me, I think this happened, it's must have been 2 years ago now at this point, but it was when I was, I'll have to tell this story on here eventually one day, but I had accidentally gotten involved with a modern day Christian cult, like an actual one,
Yep.
and I was going through like
Slide right in. Slide right into
just
those.
slide right in there, and that's a story for another day. But during the process, I knew that God was doing something there. Like God was doing something in me. And I remember I kept thinking and I kept telling God, I guess I have to prepare for worst case scenario with this situation. Like, what if these people try to do, I don't know, some kind of crazy ish? And I was just like, and God was like, you're always preparing for worst case scenario. Have you ever thought to prepare for best case scenario? Because when you're
Yeah.
preparing for worst case scenario, your haunches are already up, you are on defense and you're
Yep.
playing defense and
Yep.
that's your only thought process it. And what we know scientifically is that what you focus on literally expands, not only in
Literally.
your mind's eye, but in your reality.
And what's
And so
drawn to you.
it's literally what's drawn to you. And so when you are focused on being on defense all of the time, that's all you will receive. And
Yep.
it's kind of that, I don't know if you've heard of this. I used to watch Les Brown all the time. I love him. So he really solidified this concept of the reticular activating system.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And the
Big
basis of that,
brass fan.
yeah, yeah, big Rats fan. And the basis of that was basically that you're always training your brain on what to find and it will seek it out. So the
Yes.
second I remember when I was 16 years old and I kept looking for these freaking Volkswagen Jettas or Volkswagen GTIs, and I had never seen them before except this one time, and then all of a sudden when I started looking for them, I saw them
Yes.
everywhere
Yes.
because I was priming my brain to see them all the time.
Yeah.
And so that's the same thing that God showed me in that scenario is like if I'm priming my brain all of the time to see only the worst in people or to always be on the defense, then I'm priming myself to see that. And then thus that will be my reality.
Yeah. Your brain's just doing its job of being like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, you want more of that? Copy. Got it.
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
And so one of the big things for me, you also said something on here that's you said, about being realistic is the fastest way to mediocrity. Oh my goodness.
Isn't that good? I mean,
Yeah.
hey, it was Will Smith. Will
It
Smith,
was
you
Will Smith,
said it,
yes, yes.
but isn't that a
But at
good
the
one?
same time, it was one of the things too with the term being realistic for me, it always was synonymous with settling for less than what you
Yeah.
wanted.
Yeah.
That's what it sounded like to me. And for me, I moved from place to place and moved around a lot when I was young. And so I really got to see the way that people live their lives. And it baffled me that some people would stay in situations or stay in scenarios simply because they were too afraid of anything else. And at least that they were dealing with
Comfortable.
a type of evil that they knew,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that to them was realistic. And I always heard growing up was like, "Oh, you're young now, you're not gonna think like that later on. Like, once you become an adult, then real
Yeah.
life starts to happen."
Yeah.
And as an adult, where real life has started to happen, I've realized it's caused me to be even more, like, unrealistic and, or more delusional, or makes me having to expand more in my mind of, I have to ask for more. I have to want more. And when I set a goal, I actually set an even bigger goal. I set a stretch goal because every single thing in my life is meant to stretch me, is meant to make me grow, and, like, everything is working out in my favor, always. Bringing it back to, like, being open to receiving, and in that scenario, I think when you're talking about even being open to receiving or even asking for what you want, it's only done after you have to break through your current reality. And even that term, be realistic, to me, it goes, okay, well then you have to have a new reality, because your reality is different than my reality is different than somebody else's reality.
Just got chills. I'm circling back to breakthrough when you're done with this.
Yeah, yeah. No, and that's the basis of it is though, is that you being realistic will change based on whatever your reality is.
Right.
And so
Right.
if in one moment being realistic could be something that is, again, like I said before, the connotation is synonymous with like settling. In another reality, being realistic could be like, no, it's very realistic for me to spend $20,000 at lunch because that's my reality. My
Right.
reality is different than another person's.
Right.
And so it's about changing the connotation and breaking through my own barriers, breaking through those beliefs. But go ahead, babe.
Got chills when you said breakthrough because literally the other night I was kind of, yeah, having a meditation manifestation moment, as I do often in my bed. Like before I go to bed, I kind of try to have these intentional times where I'm scripting and manifesting and whatever. So the other day I have this house on saved on Zillow, right? So I look at it often. My beautiful house on the hills, an absurd price. Okay.
Can we say this
Like,
for a second? Quick
yeah.
second. This is how you know we're best friends, because why do I have one too? I have that same house and I look at her all the time.
Right?
Yeah, go ahead.
So an absurd price. And for a while, I was kind of looking at it and I'm like, okay, wow. Whew, so that's it's a steep price. Still keep looking at it, keep looking at it, and imagining and envisioning myself in this house, being grateful for it. Like, oh, that's my house. Cool. I feel so grateful. But it was kind of felt like a stretch goal. I literally had this moment where I was looking at it, I was looking at the price. And I was like, okay, well, I would still be happy with a house that was half that much, which I would. Amazing, cool. But I was like, my brain was like thinking through this and trying to be realistic, right? My brain was trying to be realistic of like, okay, but how can we actually make this happen? And you're probably not gonna get that house, but you could get a nice house, whatever. I literally stopped myself in my tracks, felt like I broke through that like limited thinking, and was like, wait, if that is my in-house, I'm gonna have to make that happen. So let me dream bigger and let me expect bigger things. So then it
Mm.
forced my brain to start
Mm.
thinking even bigger. And so I was like, wait, okay, so how could I make this happen? Let me dream bigger, bigger, bigger. Stop letting like I hit that limit that my brain was like, okay, don't be crazy. Don't be crazy, girl. Stopped myself and
Mhm.
literally broke through that. So I was like, no, if that is my house, I'm going to make it happen somehow. Don't care. Like it's not really my business to know
Yeah,
how.
no,
It's the
there you
universe's
is.
business,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so, yeah, I had this very, very distinct moment where I could feel myself limiting myself, and I had to break through that mindset.
Okay, so going into the topic of breaking through those mindsets, right? Because in order to get to this, like the entire point of being open to receiving, of really going after your goals and the vision, right? You want to get to the point of having the thing or whatever it is. That's great. That's the reward at the end of the thing. But the real reward is that your mind has completely transformed
Yeah.
and like you are vibrating at a different level, all those
Yeah.
things. But in order to do that, yeah, there is a breaking that needs to happen. And in order to break that pattern of thinking, you have to be aware of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I
Yes.
think the number one place that that shows up for most people, I know it did for me and it still does, is my money beliefs.
Yeah.
My money beliefs are the biggest thing because I mean, we live in a capitalistic society and everything runs on money, and it is what it is because you can't think about an experience without thinking about the money that's attached to create that experience or make that experience happen, right? You can't think about the experience of living in that home in Calabasas on a hill without
Mhm.
like you're thinking about like being on the couch in that home without
Yeah.
thinking about how much that home costs and
Right.
furnishing and all of the things that went into it. It's
Mhm.
all
Mhm.
attached to money. And so what I realized is that a lot of that breaking of beliefs was or the establishment of the beliefs that I've had, right? Of scarcity or abundance has to do with money.
Yeah.
That's just the foundation. It just is what it is, right? So once I became aware of that, then I know, okay, well, money is the belief that I need to have because money is what my mind correlates to abundance.
Yeah.
It just is what it is because that's where we're at. That's
Yeah.
literally the reality that everybody lives in, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, a lot of the exercises that I've done to not only be aware of it is for one, I've read a couple of books. One of my favorite good books about money is called You Are a Badass at Making Money. And it
Okay.
is, have you heard this book before?
I've heard of it and I haven't read it. I've heard.
Oh my goodness. A huge part of that she talks about is her like the money beliefs and the belief systems that we have in place are most of the time they're given to us, they're passed down to us, but they show up in our behaviors and they show up in our fears. And like we're talking about today, in whether we're open to receiving or not. So not only did I read this book, it blew my mind, made me aware of these different beliefs that I had that I wasn't even aware of. For example, the fact that I would turn down money all left and right when somebody would be like, oh my God,
Mm.
let me pay for you. And I'd be like, no, I got it. Thank you. It's
Mhm.
okay. Thank you. No, thank
Like,
you.
you don't have to do that. No,
No,
no, no,
no, no,
no.
no.
Yeah.
And, like, I was literally telling the universe no
Right.
all of the time,
Great
even though
point.
in my
Yeah.
prayers, I was asking, "God, can you please bring help?" And then God
Yeah.
sends help, and I say no.
You're like, "No, no, no."
Yeah, and I think it's so funny because most people think that manifesting is like this thing where it just it's magic and it just pops out of thin air, and that's not the case. What it
Right.
is the entire universe orchestrating to make something happen for you because you were vibrating at the same level as that thing.
The entire universe. Got
Oh
chills
my
when you
goodness.
said that. Literally the entire
Entire
universe.
universe. And to
I
me
Yeah.
oh, go ahead, please.
No, just the entire universe. And I heard this one quote one time where it was like, the universe will move literally millions of different things in your reality to line up with what you are vibrating with, what you need,
Yes.
experiences, people, whatever, like millions of things. We can't even fathom how much is like going on in the background to give
Mhm.
us. You can also really, really want something and you could get something 10 times better. So you might as well
Oh my
go for
god,
what you
yes.
want and stop worrying about like being disappointed because the universe is always giving you what you want or better.
Or better,
And it
yeah.
might feel weird or different at the time, but you always look back and you're like, oh, shout out to you, universe. You had a
You
plan.
knew, yeah, you had a plan better
You
than
had a
me.
plan.
That's what always eases my hearts in, like, transitional periods when I'm faced with a lot of redirection in that sense. If we're trying to train ourselves to be open to receiving, especially, come from me, hyper masculine, hyper independent, hyper everything, I could do bad all by myself type vibes, and one thing that's really helped me in being open to receiving is the little things. Oh my god, the little things. When somebody gives me a compliment, I don't completely go like, "Oh my god, no, no, no." I go, "Thank you."
Right. Receiving.
I
Yes.
just even something as simple as that, where I used to cringe and be like, "Oh God."
Yeah.
I'm like, "No,
Like, don't
actually,
say that.
think."
Don't give me a
I'm
compliment.
like, and like in the moment, it could feel so cringe in the moment, and I'm like, "Thank you. Thank you."
Like,
Um,
why are you saying that?
what do you want from me? What do you want
Yeah.
from me? Yeah. But in the moment, I'm just like, "Yeah, thank you." And I realize that when those little things throughout the day, they add up, right? And this kind of goes into my feminine energy as well, of like being open to receiving that aspect, because my feminine energy and being creative is something that I could do down pat. You know what I'm saying? I go dance, do a little something. I can be creative in my feminine energy, but one thing that was really hard for me was to be open to receiving in my feminine energy, especially money. And so one thing that I do now is, when I see a man, I literally wait for them to open the door for me. I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, I
Mhm.
expect it now because I was starting to train myself to allow men to help me specifically, because that's where my trauma comes from,
Yeah.
is to allow men to help me in those ways. And that to me, like those daily micro things helped build that up to me of like, no, everything is working out in my favor. Like, I just need to allow God to step in and use every single person, because that's what he's done. And to me, and I'll say this 1,000 times, I'm sure in a multitude of episodes, God and the universe are synonymous to me. And so when I say that the universe orchestrates the entire, like the cosmos, for me to get what I want, I'm
Literally.
not saying it from a selfish standpoint. If anything, it makes me extremely humble. It makes me like I could cry right now thinking about it. And that's the thing that like really builds my relationship with God. And it really allows me to put all of my trust in him, because even our meeting, which you can hear about in the last episode, but even me and Olivia's meeting, that was literally orchestrated by the hand of God for us to be able to meet. A
Yeah.
thousand moving parts had to happen for that to happen the way that it did, how it did, and for us to be as close as we are to even be able to have this podcast.
Yeah.
And so to me, when I get a message, and then that gives me encouragement, because when I hear a podcast and it's something that ignites me and I take action for it, I take a moment to thank God and to thank my angels. Literally, I call them my spirit team, between my God, the universe, my angels,
Yeah.
all of my spirit guides, all of
Mhm.
my ancestors,
Mhm.
everybody together. I say, I know there's more people involved in this than I'm even naming, but so I just say my whole spirit team. I take a moment to thank them, because I'm like, you made sure that I heard this podcast, that I was open to receiving what was being said,
Yep.
that the person who actually said, who had the podcast, who actually spoke up, that they had the courage to speak up and create the podcast and to edit the podcast and to post the podcast. And we get that because we're doing it now. And that encourages me to go, if they can do it, and it ignited something in me, then I can do it. And I'm
Yeah.
sure that it'll ignite something in somebody else.
No, I literally love that so much. And then I also like lately this idea of really asking for what you want and stretching, doing your stretch goals, making them bigger, bigger, bigger. Something that I've been thinking about as of late, very recently,
Mhm.
is like if you even believe in manifesting that it works maybe 10%. I'm like, okay, if at this point, I think most people, it's kind of you might not believe it fully, but you probably
Mhm.
feel it like a little bit. So even those people that are like, maybe it works a little bit, make your goals so big that you would still be happy even if you get 10%. That's
Mhm.
me right now. I'm like, my goals are so big. I there's no even if I get 10% of what I'm thinking, that's still amazing. I'm
Mm.
still gonna be living an amazing life, even if I get 10% of it. You know? So it's like get rid of this feeling of or this idea that you're gonna be disappointed if you don't get exactly what you want.
Mm.
You can still have an amazing life. I think dreaming big and asking for what you want is at least pushing you in that direction. At least you're not standing stagnant.
Exactly.
You're not standing stagnant. You're at least going in that
Moving.
direction. So
Mhm.
you're gonna get better what you want or better than that. So it's like you might as well.
Oh my God. And if you don't believe in manifesting, that's fine. You can believe in science
Right.
and like the law of physics, and
Right.
movement begets
Right.
movement, right?
Mhm.
So as long as you're anything, what is it? If anything in forward motion, it builds momentum.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Mhm.
like taking it back to the reticular activating system. If you have to gaslight yourself into a new life, baby, do it.
Gaslight yourself.
Like literally.
That is like kind of what I feel like affirmations are and just mantras is like if I tell myself enough times, I am amazing, I am that bitch, everything works out for me. Show me how easy it can be. It's literally just tricking your brain into believing that. And then you will start to see evidence of it in your reality. Like it truly is just convincing your subconscious mind to believe whatever you want it to believe. And that shit works. It's
Literally.
crazy. Literally.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you taking it back to the reticular activating system, if you're constantly, you know, trying to tell your brain to see the best case scenario or figure out the best case scenario, you will always see it because your
Yeah.
brain is searching for it.
Trained to search for
And
it.
you're training it to search for it the same
Yeah.
way that you train your dog or the same way that you train anything. You
Yeah.
could train yourself. You don't need to know the ins and outs of manifesting to know that it exists and to know that it works. Do you know
Yeah.
the ins and outs of how your car works?
Nope.
Of how
Bluetooth?
those
Bluetooth?
Bluetooth?
That confuses me all day. Like I it makes zero sense to me.
Do you
Bluetooth?
know how electricity works? You don't need to know how electricity works to know how to use it. You just need to know how to activate it and how to take care of it
Yep.
and how to pay your bill. That's it.
So we're saying ask for what you want, ask for what you want, dream big, so how do we do that? Journaling.
Oh
I
my
think
God, a huge journaling. Yeah.
huge journaling fan. Me and you are both big journal girls. Same for me. I feel like I journal a lot about what I want and really allow myself to like put it on paper, which sometimes even feels scary. You're like, what if someone reads this? But I think that a good mindset for journaling is like just assume no one is ever gonna read your journals. Do what you need to do. You
Oh
can
my
burn
God, I do the
them
opposite.
after, like doesn't matter.
We need to
Oh,
have a whole episode about journaling. I do the exact opposite. I read Anne Frank's journal in middle school, and I said, somebody somewhere is going to read my journal too. And so I want to make sure I'm giving them all the tea. If
I
I
love
had it in middle school, if I
that.
had to read about Anne Frank masturbating, somebody was going to read about all of the random thoughts in my head too.
I love that. I guess okay, that's a great point. We think differently there because me, I'm
Yeah.
like part of me, some of my journals I do like I literally am like, I do want to keep it because it'd be really cool to show someone. Like I literally wrote this down word for word for what I wanted to manifest, to bring into my reality,
Mhm.
whatever. Like I want to show. But then part of it's like there's some weird ass shit in there. So some of
Yeah,
it I
you're
don't
going to
really.
get that. That's okay. That's okay.
So yeah, do whatever you want. If you want people to read it, cool. If you don't want people to read it, it's
Whatever works for you. Yeah,
whatever
just
works for you.
journal. Yeah.
Like for me, visualizing, just like allowing myself to visualize my goals and
Oh
having a
my God, you're the Canva
board.
queen of visualization.
I'm a visual person. I have a vision board on Canva or on Pinterest. You know, I look at things I want to come into my life on Pinterest, or I put them up on a vision board on Canva, or yeah, like looking at the house on Zillow. It's like literally just like I like kind of seeing something and visualizing myself there. Can you think of any other ways to like
Prayer. Oh my
prayer?
God,
Right.
prayer. Yeah,
Big.
for me, prayer is a huge part of it. So it goes journaling and prayer. And I think it's so funny because I think people have this idea of prayer that it has to be you have to be on your knees. And don't get me wrong, that's good prayer. Don't get me wrong, that's good prayer. But I pray all the time in my head. Like I'm talking to God and I'm talking to my angels all the time where I'm like, actively, instead of just talking to myself, I'm talking to them, inviting God into your life and into your daily thoughts. And I think that especially coming from a Christian background of like always feeling like I had to be a certain way first to come to God, that was one of the first steps that allowed me to see that I could trust God and I could trust that things are going to happen. Was I invited God into every single aspect of my life. I invited God into the spaces when I was sinning. I invited God into the spaces when I was, doing things I knew I shouldn't have been doing, but I trusted God that He was still going to love me regardless. And it hasn't failed me yet. And
Yeah.
so, especially if I can trust God in those spaces, in the darkest parts of me, then I can trust God in the spaces where I'm asking Him for more, because I think a lot of times we don't ask We don't ask for more because we don't think that we deserve more. And when you really understand how loved you are by the universe, when you really take the time, and that's going back to like everything is literally being orchestrated for you. When you have that as a baseline understanding, the idea that you don't deserve something is just ridiculous.
Yeah,
And
great.
it's an insult to your creator, you
Right.
know?
That's such a good point of feeling sometimes we don't ask for things because we don't feel worthy of it. And that just goes, I think we should probably have a whole nother episode of that, of like
Worthiness.
worthiness,
Yeah.
working on yourself and feeling and doing things to kind of help yourself feel worthy of greatness. But yes, the universe literally loves you so much and is just always giving you what you think you deserve. So you have to like keep feeling and feeling more and more worthy of the promise that can come to you easily. The universe is like, babe, I got it. The universe, what gets me and gives me a lot of like hope is realizing how big our universe is. Like our universe is, I think at the moment, they think it's like 13 billion light years, more planets than grains of sand on Earth, right? The universe has created this mind-blowingly large universe around us. If you think that what you want in this life is such a big deal, it's not even a big deal to the universe. The universe is like, babe, whatever you want, I can give it to you with a snap of my freaking finger. I promise you're not asking for much. Like, ask for what you want. I got you. It's not that big of a deal. Something that really helps me think about it. And then also, like, yeah, I think Mercedes are such a good example of asking God for help and like asking God for what you want. And like an example for me with that is, I think I touched on it maybe last episode, but when I was trying to move to LA, I was kind of stressed. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get there. I'm kind of stressed about it. I literally go, you know what? Universe, show me how easy it can be to get to LA. I decided I don't want to be stressed about this anymore. Universe, I need your help. Show me how easy it can be. And then
Yes.
so many things came into fruition. I think because I asked for it. Like I asked for help. Like literally everyone actually going for what they want and doing what they want and asking for what they want literally helps, I believe,
Helps the planet. Yeah.
and it helps humanity like move in a
Mhm.
better direction. I truly hope this gives people maybe some type of permission to dig deep and let yourself bring those desires and bring those wants up to the surface and allow yourself to envision yourself living your best life without fear of being disappointed or not getting what you want, because yeah, we want what we want for a reason. Allow yourself to want it is a big part of it, and it gets easier and easier. It was kind of hard at first, like, oh, this is hard to ask for what I want, so this is hard, but it gets easier and easier. So hold that as an anchor if it does feel hard
Mm.
to do at first, but
Mhm.
it does get easier and easier to ask for what you want. And then you start to be like, oh, wait, this life can be really freaking fun.
I love that. And we will see you on the next episode.
Yes.
These episodes go out once a week.
Yes. Boom. Boom, boom.
Boom.
See ya. See ya soon. Thanks for listening.